Hey Bees, I'm Marie from Humblebee Me, and today we are doing October's Q&A video. So if you have a question you would like to see answered in a Q&A video, throw it in the comments section below. I've got a great big rolling Evernote document of questions, so I just collect everything in there, and when it comes time to make the video, I just pull a few from that list. So yeah, that's more or less how that works. But let's get started. Gnome Beard wanted to know if I like rustic camping. And I really do like rustic camping. Rustic camping is the kind of camping that I grew up with. So I've hiked the West Coast Trail twice now, done it both ways, both sort of north to south and south to north, and both ways were amazing. And to me, sort of default camping, like the normal kind of camping, is like backpacking camping, where you put everything that you need in a backpack or maybe in a canoe, and then you sort of set forth into the wilderness and pitch a tent, etc. I have done some car camping and some festival camping now sort of in adulthood, and that's always feels very indulgent because like you can have a cooler, you can have fresh milk, you can have cold beer. It's amazing. So it's all sort of very novel for me. So yes, I love rustic camping. That is sort of default style camping for me, and I should really do more of it because it's awesome. Eileen had a question about lotions and being pumpable. She was wondering if when she makes a lotion, if it's not pumpable, if it's because it's too cold in her house, or if it's because she has a spoiled ingredient. And it's usually neither of those things. It's really like 90% of this is going to be your formula, because a lotion is almost entirely water. The temperature of your house has fairly little to do with how viscous your lotion is going to be. Like that's not typically going to be the tipping point between pumpable or not pumpable, unless your house is so cold that the water is actually freezing, and I think you have maybe bigger problems in your lotion not being pumpable if things are freezing solid in your house. I typically find that if a lotion's oil phase is larger than 20%, it doesn't pump particularly well. Obviously, there are going to be exceptions to that. If you make a lotion that has a 20% oil phase, but pretty much all those oils are something really hard, like cocoa butter, obviously you're going to encounter pumping problems then as well. But that's really typically it. It's the formula. It's nothing to do with your ingredients being spoiled, and it's very rarely to do with sort of the ambient temperature, unless it is very, very cold or very, very hot. But if you're somewhere in the realm of like, I can be in this in this room without requiring like a sweater and a space heater, or I need to be completely nude to be comfortable, it's just going to be the formula. So with my recipes, I have been trying to be better about stating which ones sort of do best in pump top bottles and which ones do best in open top jars. But a fairly good way to kind of guess would be either look at what's in the picture. So if I've put it in a jar in the photograph, there's a good chance that you might want to keep it in a jar yourself. Or just take a look at the size of the oil phase. And if it is over 20%, I would probably pop that in a jar if I were you. Zill asked what my favorite dessert is. I'm fairly confident I can say it's something with a chocolate hazelnut flavor combination, because that's amazing. And I think I'm gonna choose sort of ice cream or gelato as the vehicle. I love cheesecake, but I find cheesecake is really, really rich, and it's, you know, I can just like go for ice cream because we have all these wonderful ice cream parlors like Village Ice Cream and Made by Marcus here in Calgary, and there's or it's sort of going for cheesecake is like a slightly more difficult thing, and you never get to choose between like 12 different flavors of cheesecake like you do at an ice cream parlor. So I think, yeah, like a really good chocolate hazelnut ice cream or gelato. Just like drifting off into thought about that now. Julie had a question about how to sterilize containers and then how to clean them so that you can use them again. So if you are getting your containers from a reputable supplier, you can assume that they are clean when they arrive, sort of barring any like obvious evidence to the contrary, like for instance, they're covered in dust. I would say that if you are getting your containers from a supplier that is sending you dirty stuff, stop ordering from that supplier. When it comes to cleaning your containers for repurposing, you're going to have to accept that there are a lot of things that you cannot adequately clean for repurposing. And yeah, that's a bummer, but what you're kind of looking at is either sort of stubbornly insisting on reusing something like a pump top mechanism, which is pretty much impossible to get clean because it's so intricate and has so many like deep, dark little turny crevices that you'll never really get adequately clean. So you're either reusing that and not throwing it out, or you're throwing away the product that you put in there because you've contaminated it and it's going to spoil a lot faster. So anything that's really intricate, so pump top bottles and eyedroppers, and foamer tops. Those are going to be some of your biggest, like, I'm sorry, but you do need to discard that after use. Recycle if you can, of course. Bottles can be a little bit better. Bottles and jars, things that are, don't have a bunch of tiny little like windy crevices and that sort of thing. You can often send them through the dishwasher if they are dishwasher safe. Some of them, I have definitely had things melt on me, and that's kind of a bummer. So that definitely ends up getting recycled after it's all melted and like but sort of open tubs you can usually get quite clean again, so you can run that through your dishwasher and then maybe swipe it down with some high proof isopropyl alcohol. And same with sort of jars that have reasonably open necks, glass jars that you can send through the dishwasher. They're getting exposed to very high water temperatures and then they get reasonably clean. But any kind of a complicated thing like a pump top or an eyedropper or like a lip balm tube, I'm sorry, but please recycle those things, because you're going to sort of ruin the thing that you put in the container with that contaminated mechanism. And so you're kind of looking at waste either way. And it's kind of a bummer, but I think safety is more important than getting a dozen uses out of something that you're never really going to get clean again. Michelle wanted to know what made me decide to start writing my book and what the writing process looked like. So I did the book thing maybe a little differently than other people do in that I did it with an agent. So I was working with my agent, Kate, and we were chatting about the different types of projects that I was making at the time. And we decided that cosmetics, DIY cosmetics, was sort of a niche where there wasn't really anything out in the book world on that topic at the time. So that was our topic. That was our decided sort of angle of focus. And so from there, we developed a book proposal around this idea. And so as part of developing the book proposal, I did come up with sort of a table of contents, which ended up getting changed not insignificantly as the book ended up developing. But that's where sort of the initial sort of outline of the different types of recipes I wanted to include sort of came about. And then from there, I started writing my book once we had signed a book deal with Running Press. And so they very much just sort of left me to my own devices to manage this project on my own, which was amazing and an excellent test of my ability to be organized and to manage my own time. And say the book writing process was very, very, very messy. I used a lot of the little glass prep cups that you see in a lot of my videos, and what I kind of ended up doing was using a lot of index cards and writing sort of what I had done on them and the date and leaving room for notes. And I would make the thing, usually in very small amounts, because we're talking about things like eyeliner and lipstick. So a very small amount is actually still quite a lot. And I would make it in the dish and I would be done, and then I would dry it off and I would put it on top of the index card that had sort of the relevant formulary information on it, and then I would add notes to that, and then iterations would sort of start to grow out of that. And so for months, huge portions of my house were just absolutely covered in tiny little glass dishes with different iterations of different eyeliners and lipsticks and blushes and all kinds of things. So yeah, it was very messy, and there was a lot of testing of everything, because with makeup, it's not just, with a lotion, you can sort of put it on your skin and be like, all right, well, how did that feel going on? How does my skin feel now? How does my skin feel in about 5 minutes? And then maybe in like an hour. And that's about it, right? But when you are doing something like eyeliner, it's like, all right, so how does this feel going on? How does it stay on? How does it stay on over the course of 6, 8, 12 hours? Is it moving? Does it make my eyes burn? How does it come off? There are a lot more things to test with makeup than there are with something sort of more simple like a lotion or a body oil. So there's a ton of testing that went into all of these recipes. I found the eye makeup ones to be sort of some of the most irritating ones, because eyes are oily and sensitive, and they move a lot. So you kind of combine oil with a lot of movement, and it's like your body's just like trying to wipe eye makeup off your face all day long. So those ones ended up being quite challenging. I had a giant spreadsheet of all of the different recipes that I was planning on including, and that ended up being a fairly ever-developing thing as I would learn new things and decide that maybe I didn't want to include a recipe in that format and I would prefer to include it in another format instead. And so that kind of ended up being my master to-do list as I worked through developing the recipes, and then once I was happy with the recipe, writing it up and then developing a bunch of color blends that went with the base. So that's more or less it. I don't know if you'd call that sort of like a highly refined process by any means, but it was very, very fun. And I felt like it was an excellent challenge of my organizational and time management skills, and I learned so much and made so many messes, and was very, very grateful that I did not have roommates at the time, as were, I'm sure, any hypothetical roommates. And all right, there are some answers to some questions. If you have one of your own, leave it in the comments below, and I will see you next time.